Everybody, Steven here once more. Going to continue and conclude the story about the vintage Hulk figures and some of his enemies from the mid-90s. In my previous video you have seen some of the incarnations of the Hulk, so I'm going to continue along the same line, and this time we have only 3 figures to cover. So the first one is the Hulk himself, and this is one of the largest made in that particular line. This Hulk came packaged in a plastic container, and then also sorry, not a plastic container, a plastic cage that was then put in a carton packaging. So this would be considered a deluxe version of the Hulk. Why is it a deluxe? Sadly, I don't have that cage any longer, but the figure did survive. And what was the point of this deluxe figure? You would have the Hulk packaged inside that plastic cage, and he would work on batteries, meaning the figure. You would put some of the batteries in the compartment in the back of him here. He would also have a lever to activate the feature. So inside the cage you could just put your hand in there, and when you press the lever he would let out a very nasty sound out of his mouth, and then you would have to do this motion with the fists repeatedly, and he would smash the cage to bits, in other words, to escape. At the same time, as you can see, when you press the lever down, his jaw opens and his shirt is ripping apart along the middle, slowly coming apart. So that was the main articulation as far as that goes. The head could not really turn because of the action feature connected to the jaw, and the arms could move on their own like so, but they have a much better range of motion when you press the lever down. The legs could move roughly this much forward, not a whole lot more than that, and they could not move backwards. There is no waistline articulation, there is no articulation in the shoulders to move the arms sideways, and none in the wrists either. So this figure is one of the largest of the Hulk incarnations from that particular toy line. And just to show you the difference in size between him and one of his other versions, we're putting him right there next to Joe Fixit, his gangster personality. And you can tell roughly that he's extremely massive in size and much bigger than the figure next to him. So he's quite large. And there was another variation of this figure released around the same time, where he's not a deluxe version, he's just without the shirt, without the lever, and actually he still had the lever to move his arms and fists up and down, but there was no shirt and no articulation in the jaw either. And that other version was more like a regular figure. So then to continue, that would be as far as the Raging Hulk goes. To show some of the enemies, and I don't have all of them, I only have 2. This is Abomination, a long-time enemy of Hulk, and he made it into the toy line, and he comes specifically with this removable cape that has some thorns in it and shreds and such, and it can be easily attached onto him over his head. He does come with the pre-posed hands. There is articulation in the wrists. He cannot move the arms sideways, but he does have the wrist articulation. The arms can move all the way around. There is no action feature, so there is no lever at the back. In the waist he's able to move as well. Legs go about that much forward. They cannot go backwards, and there is no ankle or knee movement. So Abomination is supposed to be was supposed to have an alter ego, meaning a human version of himself, who used to be I understand a Soviet spy, who managed to get affected by pretty much the same kind of exposure to gamma rays as Bruce Banner did, and he was permanently transformed into Abomination. Abomination here can be seen in the comics and cartoon series and so forth. And in one of the comic books he was killed by a Red Hulk. Red Hulk is a newly created character for those of you who are probably familiar with it. So he's a pretty good figure, very muscular and massive in size, and looking pretty good, the way he would look in the cartoon or the comics. At least that's the early representation of him. There is more representation of him later on in the newer toy lines and the Marvel Legends as well. The one next to him is Crusher Creed. That's his name, and he actually shows up in the cartoon series at that time period, and he's also known in the comics as also a long-standing enemy of Hulk and Avengers and so forth. He comes with only one accessory, which is his chain ball that he uses as a weapon in a fight. His power is that he's able to touch any kind of material from metal and so forth and absorb it into his body and coat his body with that material and use it to his advantage in a fight. He does have a lever, so that when you press the lever, he's able to move both of his hands, especially the one holding a chain ball, as he's about to swing it at the enemy. So the arms can be moved a bit on their own without pressing the lever. There is a side articulation that the arms can be raised on the side. There is a there is a waist articulation, and the legs can move about that much forward. And you can see him here in the stage of absorbing some kind of material or metal, and it's starting to cover his body. It already covered half of him. And the accessory looks pretty neat, and you can see that he's usually wearing his prison suit or prison pants with the heavy boots. There is another version of him, or at least two more versions of him that were released years after this one from the Marvel Legends, and they look somewhat different with a bit more articulation. So that would be as far as the Absorbing Man or Crusher Creed goes. One small detail I forgot to mention, and I'll just use that chance now, about Maestro Hulk. I already talked about him in the first video, and I mentioned about the mementos he kept from all the enemies he defeated and killed. But I did forget to mention his cape, this one right here, that also comes and goes around his body, and it's connected to the end. Unfortunately, the piece of the belt is missing, so I cannot connect it over his body anymore. But at least I'll show you what this cape contains. He defeated Doctor Strange, obviously, because he's wearing his cape. And he has this belt, cross belt, where he put all the face masks and the helmets of the heroes and villains he defeated as well. So he defeated Nova from Nova Corps. He defeated Doctor Doom, whose face mask he took away. And he defeated Iron Man and Ultron and even Juggernaut. So they're very nicely done and molded across his belt. And the fact that he has so many souvenirs of all the enemies he fought is a very nice touch. So I just wanted to add this little detail that I forgot to mention about him. So anyway, this is as far as it goes about my vintage Hulk figures that I can tell you about. Next time I will continue with some of the other vintage Marvel figures from the 90s period. So until then, thanks for watching, and see you guys again. Bye.